Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I always say, if you send me a message or a screenshot of a rating and review, I'll give you a shout out. And today I want to thank Villy H, who that's their name, on Apple Podcasts. I think they're located in the US, and they left a review saying, Neil, fantastic show. Love how you always manage to keep the audience engaged and has a fantastic take on things with brilliant comparisons. Love the pod. Keep up the stellar work. So a big thank you to Villy H for taking the time to leave the review there. And also another shout out to Mujtaba Mehdi, who's a quality assurance engineer at Trivago. He DM'd me on LinkedIn recently, said, I listened to my first podcast till the end the other day and really enjoyed it. He enjoyed the one with Timer Rashid, and he said he loves the way we find success stories on here and really enjoyed the episode. So a big thank you to you both for your messages there. And for everyone listening, please connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is. Don't just hit follow though. Connect with me. Send me a message. Say, tell me where you're listening to the podcast in the world. And you can find me nice and easy, really. I'm at Neil C. Hughes on all those platforms. And also my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But on with today's show. And before the coronavirus pandemic made its way around the world, a handful of physical access control manufacturers were working on creating a more frictionless authentication process that would involve a hassle-free and touch-free experience. And yeah, fast forward 2 years on into the virus, and it's made everyone wary of door handles and nearly every surface around them. And you have physical access control in the middle of a significant transformation. And almost all physical access control companies are working to either create or integrate touchless authentication into their systems now. And what was once seen as a nice-to-have complementary feature for a secure system and has become a must-have. And it's connecting everything from confirming access based on employment records to serving as a way to permit or deny access based on vaccine requirements that enter a premises. And there's a whole other podcast right there. But with cloud computing and AI integrated facial recognition software expected to be one of the primary drivers of this growth in the market, especially as the need for touchless access control increases across every industry. In addition to the touchless nature of facial recognition-based security systems, I wanted to explore more about this topic and what's happening. So today, I'm going to be asking you to buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to California to speak with Tina D'Agostin from a company called Alcatraz AI. And she's going to share how they're using tech to streamline traffic at building entrances, gates of terminals, etc. And instead of stopping and searching through pockets and purses for IDs or work badges, authorised individuals will be able to walk in as facial recognition technology seamlessly authenticates and authorises them. And I know there's a whole lot of topics around that very kind of technology, and we're going to talk about it all today. But enough from me. Let's get Tina onto the podcast now.
Right.
So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are?
I'd love to, Neil, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm the CEO of Alcatraz AI. Alcatraz AI is headquartered in Redwood City, California, and is transforming the way you enter secured faces using your face as your credential. Our state-of-the-art product, the Rock, is an award-winning access control solution, which leverages artificial intelligence to provide frictionless, highly secure entry into physical locations. And with features like touchless or multi-factor authentication, tailgating intelligence, and video at the door, we make buildings smarter, more sustainable, and safer.
Now, straight away, within the first 5 minutes, you've mentioned Alcatraz and The Rock. And I know you're in California, but I've got to ask, is there a story behind the name Alcatraz AI?
We are based in the Bay Area, so the founders leveraged the name Alcatraz, which has impenetrable security, but in our case, instead of not letting people out, we protect people from getting in. And of course, The Rock is the nickname for Alcatraz.
Oh, I love that. What a great story. And before we learn more about Alcatraz AI, I'd love to take you way back before and ask you to share your origin story, where your passion for tech came from and what it was that put you on this path that you're on today.
The genesis of my love of tech was at an early age. On my mom's side of my family, my grandfather and great-grandfather were both engineers, and they always had prototypes and blueprints around their home offices. So I was exposed to the early makings of technology. And then on my dad's side of the family, my family were entrepreneurs and owned a distribution company. And so I was exposed to entrepreneurship. I ended up following the business side of my studies. And my studies also took me abroad to London, where I traveled extensively to other countries. And there I developed a love of architecture with the various types of historical buildings in different regions of the world. But I also realized that those older buildings, like my dorm, were cold and uncomfortable due to the antiquated infrastructure in them. So these loves of technology, business, and architecture then culminated. And I began my career out of college in the building technology space. And then shortly after joining the industry, 9/11 occurred, and I felt even more conviction about being in this industry that helped organizations be safe through technology. So throughout my career, I've always had a mission personally to be in building technologies that primarily focus on making buildings in the world safer and more comfortable. Because without that safety and comfort, companies can't accomplish their missions. And I'm from the Chicago area originally, but I migrated west and spent the last 10 years in the Bay Area. And I moved here to really further deepen my passion for technology and the waves of innovation impacting all aspects of life. And I've been involved in building technology projects for skyline changing projects like Salesforce Tower, Levi Stadium, Chase Arena, and so many others. And it's really very gratifying to be involved with deploying technology in a building from the ground up. And I met our founder, Vince Gedarshev, a couple of years ago and became interested in how AI has really evolved to underpin many essential aspects of our lives and how Alcatraz was creating the next generation of access control for smart buildings. The data and insights that we do at the edge can be used in countless meaningful ways to make a building more intelligent and secure. So after learning about the technology, roadmap, and vision, I knew that Alcatraz had the opportunity to completely transform the way we enter secured spaces and disrupt the access control market.
Wow, what a great story. And I love the story behind the company as well and how you're stopping people from getting in rather than getting out. So that path led you to Alcatraz AI, which, as you said, is reimagining the way you enter secured spaces, but by using your face as a credential. But can you expand on the problems that you set out to solve with this tech?
Absolutely. So internal theft, breaches, and other security issues can significantly impact a company, of course. It's estimated to cost U.S. businesses up to $50 billion each year. And our technology leverages AI to be the first line of defense in buildings by verifying a person's identity using facial authentication, which makes buildings both easier to navigate and harder to break into, back to that impenetrable security. Meanwhile, many employees are dissatisfied with existing safety measures. A recent Gallup poll found that only 65% of workers are completely satisfied with their physical safety at work. And that's actually the lowest point since 2001. And the World Economic Forum recently noted that US perceptions of workplace safety have never been so low. So in response, companies are turning to new technologies to enhance workplace safety. And this is especially true for artificial intelligence, which can considerably improve workplace safety without inundating security teams with additional responsibilities. And more specifically, when AI takes on repetitive or dangerous tasks, it frees up human labor to carry out that work that we as humans are better equipped for, like tasks involving aspects of creativity and empathy. So to solve for these issues, higher security, being more hygienic and safe, and all with less intervention, human intervention. Our solution, the Rock, is deployed at doors. It can be deployed in elevators, on turnstiles, and other secured areas like racks in server rooms. And it provides security with an automated way to manage the access to these spaces and give employees a frictionless experience. And what makes Alcatraz AI's technology so unique from our competitors in terms of workplace safety is that we've developed the first autonomous access control technology. We're truly creating a new category, and that revolutionizes physical security by providing facial authentication through AI to modernize and improve access control systems. So there's really four main features. The first is touchless authentication. As it suggests, that's without friction, entering a controlled space without having to touch anything. The second is multi-factor authentication for higher secure environments. The third is tailgating detection. So our Rock has a long scanning range and large field of view, and we can detect tailgating and send real-time alerts if an unauthorized person enters. And tailgating is the number one cause of a security breach because it's an inadvertent. And at some point, Neil, you've probably been guilty of it. We all have. It's when an unauthorized user slips in behind someone who is authorized. So someone holds the door open for someone who isn't supposed to be there. And sometimes the unauthorized individual holds that door for a bad actor because it's just human nature to be courteous. So that's the third feature. And then the fourth is video at the door. We can function as a camera and send images to the video system. And it's truly a unique door level perspective. So typically cameras are mounted above, looking down at someone's head, and we're seeing those individuals right at the door.
Okay, you've beat it out of me. I'm going to have to confess. In my time, I have been both a tailgater and a tailgatee. I'm guilty as charged. But as you said, we've all done it at some stage, haven't we?
We have. As long as you didn't go on to be a bad actor, it's all good.
No. Not at all. I'm trying to be the good guy. But I'm curious, there's two other words you mentioned in there, and one was touchless and the other was hygiene. So with that in mind, I'm curious, has the pandemic caused an increased demand for things like frictionless authentication processes and these touch-free experiences that you mentioned?
Yes, definitely. The main drivers of this increased demand are really 5 compelling events and macro trends. So the first is construction and tenant improvements. That's where customers renovating a facility or building a new facility. And as an example, data centers through the pandemic are expanding to accommodate all the work from home traffic. So they've had to do additions to existing data centers and also new data centers coming out of the ground. So we work in these greenfield applications. The second is being compliance driven and code requirements. So there are regulations that have been adopted in certain industries to really codify 2-factor authentication in areas like data centers and IDF rooms and areas that protect the electric grid. And the third is in the back to work pandemic initiatives that most companies have undertaken now. As they bring employees back to the office, these enhanced COVID and health safety protocols make touchless environments really an imperative, not a nice to have, but a need to have. Just a quick story about that. Yeah. I was recently in an elevator and normally you see people doing a chicken dance of sorts, holding up their elbow to push the button for their floor. But this time I actually saw a woman whose hands were full and she couldn't use her elbow. So she actually used her foot to push the button in the elevator. and this may seem extreme, but this is where some people's heads really are at. And building owners and managers to attract employees back to the office have to create this safe environment. And then the fourth macro trend is increasing breaches. And this is happening both in physical and cybersecurity. breaches are on the rise, and the average breach is over $4 million. And other security incidents such as workplace violence and theft are really keeping security leaders up at night. A slightly more unoccupied building creates more opportunity for those bad actors. So security teams are tightening security and hardening their physical security layer and really solving for this increased risk. And I know you recently had Rick McElroy on your show from VMware, and I had the opportunity to listen to that session. And he discussed multi-factor authentication as a trend. And you really can't log into important applications now, like your financial institution, without a second form of authentication. And this same trend is occurring in the physical world. Only you can't send an email to verify someone's identity when they're standing at the door. So instead, we enable a badge plus facial verification as the second layer of authentication. And also, to create a holistic zero trust environment, you have to take these physical access points into consideration. And then lastly, there's an industry trend in security for the demand for AI. And the Security Industry Association recently released its 2022 top security trends. And it was really no surprise that the number one trend projected is AI for 2022. And that's for automating security tasks and doing more with less and really reducing the need for human intervention.
And you guys in the US have recently had the Super Bowl, and I was reading about it earlier, and the $5 billion stadium and how it's dominated by tech and everything from turnstiles to purchases and everything. And again, touchless technology is dominating everything. But I'm curious, if we zoom out beyond the Super Bowl and every area that we all encounter when we're going out, what are the biggest benefits of streamlining that human traffic at building entrances in offices, gates, turnstiles at concerts, or terminals? What would you say the biggest benefits are?
Well, Neil, imagine a world where you don't have to carry any keys or key cards anymore. Your unique face just unlocks everything. There's no friction for the user or for the system administrator. And the way that we accomplish that is through this new category that we're creating of autonomous access control. Is what's inhibited the wide-scale adoption of biometrics in the past has been the user experience has been a bit clunky, and certainly for the administrator. And so what we do is we make the enrollment autonomous. Instead of going back to a security office to have to take your image taken, it's done right at the door, and the employees can self-enroll. And on the back end of that, it's autonomous administration. The administrators don't have to interact. The enrollment happens autonomously, and this ensures that it's intuitive for the security staff to manage. And then tailgating, like we talked about, number one cause of a security breach, that it detects unauthorized personnel. And we can finally stop that incident from occurring because we address it in real time. And tailgating is also on the rise because common areas now have checks. They might be checking for vaccinations or temperature or masks. So many employees avoid those common areas and go to another door and sneak in behind an authorized user. So it's really creating this frictionless experience where it's happening, we're detecting anyone who doesn't belong, and we're enabling the wide-scale adoption where facial authentication can become ubiquitous because we've made it so technologically simple. I don't think anyone would argue that using keys or key cards is an enjoyable experience. You lose them. Thankfully, there's solutions like Tile, which is one of my favorites because I lose my keys all the time. And that won't occur any longer because your face is always with you and it's unique to you, so it's more secure.
And as we've been wearing masks for the last 2 years, I know a lot of people get frustrated when they just want to log into their bank looking at their phone, and because they've got the mask, it doesn't recognise their face, etc. So for that, can you tell me a little bit more about mask detection technologies and how that's integrated into security systems too?
Yes, during the pandemic, we adapted and we created a feature to detect masks if a company wanted to enforce masks in common areas and when people were first entering the building. So we still have that setting. So if someone doesn't have a mask on, we actually can block access. Our Rock is an edge device, and we can integrate with many different technologies at the edge because we're collecting data and insights, and we can share those data and insights with other systems to make decisions. Another example of this would be building management. So, for example, in the future, we can count people not only for social distancing, but also, most importantly, for energy savings. Energy spend in buildings is the number one spend. So there's a real value proposition there, and we can control the operating parameters of the HVAC systems based on how many people are in the space. So change heating and cooling. And this is where we achieve truly smart buildings.
And for people listening all around the world in multiple industries, could you possibly share a use case of how it could work at a big event, just so they could understand how it might work in their world too?
Yes. Well, since we just had the Super Bowl last night, and you mentioned the Rams, let's think about the stadium where they're running off the field. So while they run to the locker rooms, they can't carry a credential. And so the Rock authenticates them going back from the tunnel and to other VIP areas. So that's a great example of a touchless experience where there really isn't another option. It's an imperative to make that seamless for the players. And we also ensure that no one else is running behind the player and can access those VIP areas if they're not authenticated, because we detect tailgating.
Again, what would you say to people listening who might have privacy concerns with facial recognition being used, and how those biometrics and data is being used too? It must be a question you get a lot.
It is. And I would say whatever ideas that you may have about facial recognition, they don't apply when you think of Alcatraz.
Yeah.
And that's because we don't do facial recognition in a traditional way. We have innovated, patented technology that is next generation. And there's really three main points that should remove any of these privacy concerns. So first, we don't collect or store any personal identifiable information, which is also known as PII. The user remains completely anonymous to us. And all we pass through to authenticate you is a numerical value that is bound to a 3D image that is taken of your face. Not even the image of your actual face, but a digital hash in the form of a badge number. And second, our data is fully encrypted using the highest enterprise grade security, AES 128 encryption, and it's penetration tested by third parties and certified by all the necessary governing entities. And lastly, we don't take information without your knowledge. You're opted in. So you're walking up and you understand you're authenticating. It's not a surveillance device that is capturing your image in a public setting unbeknownst to you. It's a deliberate authentication. And it actually serves to protect you, much like multi-factor authentication protects you from cyber identity theft. The Rock serves to verify your identity for physical access control, so no one can impersonate you if you lose your badge or it's stolen.
And you've had a great year already. It's only in February, but I'm curious, what's next for you? What's your big focus in 2022, and where do you go from here?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's already February, and this is going to be a very busy year for us. And our focus is on making our customers and channel partners successful and really helping educate them on our technology and value we can bring to their operating environments. And we're really fortunate to be a solution to almost every vertical that has a need for security, and especially those enterprises with highly secure environments. And we have an exciting milestone coming up. We're actually in the process of closing our Series A round. And this round will enable us to further invest in our market, which will also include international expansion. And we already have a tremendous product market fit and we just need people to go support our customers and channel partners. And so we're adding on to the already stellar team we have to achieve this more expansive growth. And so this funding will enable the next phase in Alcatraz path and really help us to offer support on return to work strategies and making security stronger, like we've talked about, by automating access control.
Well, we began the podcast talking about your origin story, and now we've come full circle. I'm going to ask you to leave the listeners on a slightly inspirational note and ask you if there's a song, movie, book, or an individual or anything that has inspired you or accompanied you in your career that you would like to pass on down and leave to everyone listening. Is there a choice and a story behind it that you can share with us?
Absolutely. It's brilliant, Neil, that you have your own playlist. And I actually had a chance to listen to your playlist this weekend on Spotify. And I confirm that no one has mentioned this song yet. So I'll talk about a song. In my career origin story, I mentioned my grandparents. On my father's side, I'm Italian. And on my mother's side, I'm Norwegian. And one of the first bands that I listened to when I was younger was Aha, which is a Norwegian band that I've always had an affinity towards and still love today. And music has always been a really important part of my life. And one of the first videos that I saw was Aha, Take On Me. And to share some background on the song, which many people may not know, Aha had actually named the song differently when they were creating it. It was called Miss Erie and Panorama before they finally remixed the song and called it Take On Me. And it was first released in the UK in 1984. So I'm dating myself now. And at that time, it actually only made it to number 137 on the charts. And then Warner Brothers in the US signed Aha, and Take On Me was re-released in the UK. But unfortunately, this single flopped again for a second time. And finally, a Warner Brothers executive was brought in to direct the revolutionary animation music video, which took 6 months to complete. And the song soon became a worldwide hit thanks to the video and its heavy use on MTV. And it finally reached number 1 in the US and number 2 in the UK. And then it went on to win six awards at the 1986 MTV Video Music Awards. And today it's known as one of the greatest music videos of all time. So I think it's a great story of perseverance for entrepreneurs and others, that you can fail miserably several times and then make it big through a revolutionary innovation. So my song for everyone out there is to think about the determination associated with Take On Me. And it's a peppy tune, no less.
It really is. So you've got a great song, great video, and great story. And at the risk of dating myself, I can tell it was Morton Harkett, Powell, and Mags in the band as well, because I was a big fan back in the day. So I'll add that to our Spotify playlist. But before I let you go, for anyone listening that would just like to find out more information about Alcatraz AI, The Rock, and everything that we've talked about today, what's the best starting point?
It's our website. Our domain is www.alcatraz.ai. We're also on Twitter at Alcatraz AI, and you can find our LinkedIn profile under Alcatraz AI as well.
Well, I think as the world opens back up 2 years after the pandemic first hit, it's made everyone wary of door handles and nearly every surface around them. You just got to look around when you're out and about and you see this firsthand. And I love how physical access control is in the middle of a significant transformation at the moment. And I love how you've made it touchless and frictionless, and how you've used technology to solve a very real problem out there at the moment. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing that great story, and including the one about Aha too. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Neil. It was a pleasure to join you.
So if we take a building that already has mobile access control technology for its security, perhaps QR codes are used at the entrance to scan and authenticate that phone. Presumably the person holding it is registered within a system. However, what I've loved about today's conversation is we're asking the question now, what if the person holding the phone isn't? Now, facial authentication can act as a second barrier and identify that person holding the phone, ID, work badge, who isn't who the credentials say they are. and do all that without anyone touching anything. So many big talking points. I'd love to hear your insights, experiences, how you're tackling these problems and the good and bad technology solutions that you've seen out there. Whatever it is, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. I'll be back again bright and early tomorrow with another guest, so keep your messages coming in. Please leave a rating review if you have time. Send me a screenshot and I'll give you a shout out. But thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.